everyone. I'm Kevin Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. The Vatican has announced that Pope Francis has approved new procedures to investigate and judge claims of abuse of office by bishops who allegedly failed to protect minors and vulnerable adults from sex abuse. Included in these procedures will be a new judicial section in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith that has a papal mandate to judge bishops with regard to crimes of abuse of office connected to the abuse of minors. Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston, a member of the group of cardinal advisors and president of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, presented to the Council and the Pope a number of proposals for greater accountability of bishops in dealing with cases of clerical sexual abuse. The announcement comes at the end of the Pope's meetings with the Council of Cardinals taking place at the Vatican. More news now from the Vatican. During his weekly general audience, Pope Francis continued his discussion of difficulties facing today's families. This week, focusing on illness in the family. Rome Reports has more from St. Peter's Square.
With the summer heat kicking off in Rome, Pope Francis started off his general audience by making a few rounds in St. Peter's Square in the Pope-mobile. He greeted the crowds and blessed several babies along the way. In his catechesis, the Pope reflected on families that deal with the illness of a loved one. He said families are in essence the first hospitals, showing heroism on a daily basis.
Tutti l'abbiamo viste, un uomo, una donna, ma con la faccia stanco, con tutto l'atteggiamento stanco. Ma tu che cosa succede? Ho dormito soltanto 2 ore perché a casa facciamo il turno per essere vicino al bimbo, alla bimba, ammalato, al nonno, alla nonna. E la giornata continua col lavoro. Ma queste cose sono eroiche. Sono le eroicità delle famiglie, quelle eroicità nascoste.
Even with the deep sorrow of seeing a loved one in pain, a window is opened, said the Pope, to strengthen one's heart, faith, and soul.
Di fronte alla malattia, anche in famiglia, sorgono difficoltà a causa della debolezza umana. Ma in genere il tempo della malattia fa crescere la forza dei legami familiari.
Looking now at news from around the country, the Spring General Assembly of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, seen here on Catholic TV, has been taking place in St. Louis, Missouri. During the meetings, the bishops have heard presentations on the Pope's upcoming encyclical on the environment, the U.S. Church's ongoing work in promoting traditional marriage, and the need to remain vigilant in protecting children from abuse. Also on the first day of the meetings, there were reports on the bishops' work on immigration reform, rebuilding in Haiti, the Pope's upcoming visit and World Meeting of Families, and keeping up with technological advances in communication. On the second day, the bishops voted to rework a draft for priorities and plans for the conference for 2017 through 2020. They voted to approve the inclusion of revised canticles for the Liturgy of the Hours for use in U.S. dioceses, and they heard from married couples about how they can encourage the vocation of marriage in their diocese. The bishops also heard from Curtis Martin, founder and CEO of the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. He encouraged the bishops to continue to lead young people to live the gospel message. Back to the Vatican now. Pope Francis met with the Prime Minister of Canada this past week at the Vatican. Rome Reports has more on that visit.
Pope Francis met with Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper at the Vatican. Their introduction was simple and friendly, although there was some confusion once they moved to begin their meeting. They then held a private meeting. The two discussed religious freedom, the environment, terrorism, and the relationship between Canada and the Church. They also talked specifically about issues in Europe and the Middle East. The Canadian leader introduced his wife and members of his entourage. Again, there was some minor confusion about protocol. Once the encounter ended, Harper said farewell to the Pope, and he responded in English.
Thank you, it's been great.
It was the first time Harper met Pope Francis. However, he had an encounter with Pope Benedict XVI in 2009.
And finally in the news, this past week, Pope Francis addressed participants in an annual conference on hunger organized by the Rome-based UN Food and Agricultural Organization. The Pope told them that vague concerns and long-winded reports about hunger must be turned into action. He said policies that guaranteed access to food must be passed and people must stop wasting and start sharing. The Pope said the number one way to feed the some 800 million people who are undernourished or starving is to turn good intentions and plans into concrete responses to hunger. A second concern, he said, is the amount of food being wasted, estimated to be a third of total food production. The Pope went on to say that as nations share the world's finite resources, the current wide extreme of food crisis may be harmonized, which would mean, the Pope said, that nutritional concerns for richer nations will no longer be eliminating fats and promoting exercise, and for poorer nations trying to get at least one meal a day. Well, that is all the information we have for you this time. I'm Kevin Nelson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week with Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV network.